Hi, I'm Larry Dignan. I'm here with ZDNet, and we're talking to NI CEO Eric Starkloff about the company's rebranding and kind of what it means to give engineers everything they need to do their job. Hi, Eric. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Larry. Good to see you.
So I guess let's just start at the top about, kind of National Instruments history. I know you guys have a 100-year plan, which is a tad long term, and just kind of walk me through, I guess what got the company here so far.
Yeah, so so NI has been a company with a 40 plus year history, and we've really served engineering since the very, very beginning. We're the company that creates software and hardware that engineers use to, build and test the products that we all use every day. So we're used really ubiquitously by engineers in every industry. A lot of people outside of engineering, don't know as much about NI, but if you're an engineer, you definitely know who we are and have probably used our products. We have a pretty long-term perspective. You referenced the 100-year plan. That's really a framework that we use for long-term decision making. And I think it's particularly important in the technology field because there's so much that obviously does change really quickly, right? And we have to recognize that. I mean, planning technology, even on a 5 or 10-year time horizon, is kind of a fool's errand because it changes so quickly. But what we do in like a 10-year and even 100-year planning is what are the things that we are going to preserve? What are the sort of cultural elements, the value to society? How do we envision ourselves in a time horizon that's clearly beyond any of our lives? And I think that's really served us well in a time like this. What it means to me is that we make sure that the long-term objectives of the company we don't undermine them with short-term decisions. And that becomes important when you're facing a global pandemic and economic calamity and some of the things that have been thrown at us over the last couple months. We've preserved our investments and even just announced the largest acquisition in the company's history this week, in fact, as well.
So I guess walk me through that acquisition, which gets you more in the software space, and also just, I noticed in your earnings, your R&D has been, actually trending up a good bit. I think it was like 20-something% of sales, which is pretty high.
Yep.
I guess just walk me through, that software acquisition and also sort of the approach to R&D.
Yeah. So first of all, software is a big part of who we are historically, and we have a very strong software position at sort of an engineering level. So our software, and particularly a tool called LabVIEW, which is well known in our community, is a graphical development environment that engineers use to build sensing systems and testing systems and measurement systems and the like. And that's been a real strong portion of the company's portfolio for a long time. As we've developed and really, created a growth strategy and transformed the company over the last couple of years, the simplest way to think of it is going from just serving engineers to serving engineers and enterprises. And the acquisition this week is a company called Optimal Plus, and they are a leader in product data analytics. They really are enterprise level software that's used for mainly manufacturing organizations to improve the yield and quality of their products. And so from my point of view, what this does is really extends our software offering from the common tools used by engineers up through the enterprise level software where you can get more value out of the data that comes from those measurement systems that are often created with our technology.
So in the engineering space, is this similar to kind of what's happened in enterprise overall, where you're seeing like developers mix in with data scientists and, there's sort of like, they were siloed roles and now they're kind of blending together. Is that happening in the engineering space too?
It is. And it's, one of the ways I've looked at it is I've always said, that there is a gold mine of information and the data that comes from these engineering systems. So for example, today our technology is used for the test systems for most of the electronics that are manufactured in the world. It's the last thing, your electronic device or the electronic control system of your car sees before it leaves the factory and into your hands. Is it the quality gets verified often on the system with NI technology. And that is very rich data about the operation of that product, about the quality of that product, but that's tended to stay locked into a particular silo of those organizations. Just like you're seeing everywhere else, technology is allowing more and more for us to both kind of unlock those silos, to basically look across an organization at the data, to use much more complex analytics to improve the design of products, to improve the quality and yield of those products. That's what this software does. It is, can run on premise or in the cloud. It uses all the buzzwords of analytics that you would expect. So it uses machine learning kind of algorithms to improve its function over time. And it essentially uses that product data to help improve a company's products and improve their operations as well.
What are some of the other roles within the enterprise that would touch on this stuff? Like,
So this
is
would,
it product designers? Is it,
yeah.
supply chain people? I guess who else would touch this at this point?
Yeah, it spans from the biggest ones actually today of the particular company that we bought is going to be in operations and supply chain. So this primarily runs on factories, or it runs on the semiconductor fab, or outsourced assembly and test company that the end brand is actually using to produce their products, because they want to get data oversight on their products that are being produced by a third party. Those are the roles that are primarily touching it. Over time, it is our goal to extend that software up into the engineering space, which we serve a lot of. So our platform scales from engineering through to production and manufacturing and operations. And we see a lot of value on connecting the data from the early stages of R&D of a product through the production of that product, and helping to shrink the time it takes to get new technology into the market, which is obviously, there's a lot of pressure to do so in our space.
So walk me through the rebrand, and I guess some of the strategy, and also what has to happen before you do a rebrand.
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked it that way, because Larry, the thing is, it doesn't start with the rebrand. What it started with was a transformation of our company that we've been undergoing over the last few years. And the root of that transformation, of course, starts with like what's happening in our markets and our customers. And they're under, frankly, they have three challenges that they're facing that led to all of this. One is, they're like many other roles in the world. Engineers are being asked to do more with less. I've heard one of my peers in the industry said some of the engineering and R&D has been hollowed out in many industries. So you have fewer people. You don't have legions of engineers on projects. You have smaller teams of people. Second is that, technology is moving faster. So the time to introduce new technology and stay competitive is shortening in all the industries we serve. And then finally, the devices themselves, especially in semiconductor and electronics, becoming exponentially more complex. And when you put all those together, what that means in our space is we've traditionally been a company that provides tool level products to our customers. We call them, think of them like Lego bricks. They put them together into a test system, into a measurement system, into a quality control system, into an IoT data system. And what our customers need us to do is actually give them something much closer to an intelligent system and a higher level starting point, because of the speed and complexity of their devices. So we've been transforming the company to be able to build on these kind of broad-based products to create more system level capability, to invest more in systems, software, and services. And that's where it all started. The rebranding of the company then is in lockstep with that. It's essentially, how do we make sure that our company that has such a long and well-known heritage in our space and is known for a certain thing, how do we expand the way the company is viewed, that's in line with the transformation that we've had in strategy and in our whole organization and how we serve our customers. So that's the essence of it. It's really about getting to engineers and enterprises. And then there's an element of it that's really important to me personally, which is celebrating engineering. And that's a role that we've played, and we want to take that to a bigger stage, frankly, because we think that, now more than ever, celebrating the role of these creative people that help define the world that we all live in many, many ways, is something that we have a role to play in doing.
So I guess if you have your way, engineers will be, bells of the ball, just like developers are now.
Yeah. I think their time is due. We have a conference each year called NI Week, and we get to put some of these, engineers up in front of 10,000 people and celebrate the work that they do. And there are some amazing innovations that are happening, whether it's the engineers that are figuring out how to land a rocket at Blue Origin, to come back and land. We've seen SpaceX and Blue Origin do that. The technology and creativity that goes into an application like that is pretty incredible. To something that's pretty, close to all of our hearts right now is, the engineers at Ventec that had to figure out how to 10x scale their ventilator production in a few weeks' time, and we worked with them on that. And I mean, it's just there's a lot to celebrate there, and these people that are creating this technology as the world becomes more and more technocentric, they have a big role to play and an important role to play.
What's unique to the engineering market that would be, you know, worth pointing out compared to, you know, like software developer, computer science, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, you know, the people that we serve, I think from that perspective, one is they have to have a lot more systems mentality. So, of course, all of this customer base has become more software centric. So they have a dose of computer science. Many of them have a computer science background. More often, they have an engineering background that has a heavy dose of computer science, but they have to understand all the way from real world IO, you know, the input and output of real signals, through hardware design, through software design, and often into mechanical. Sometimes that's a team of people, but often the individual has to have more and more of the systems mentality, and they need sort of systems level development tools that meet those needs. So that's one thing that's distinct. I tell you, more than the distinct thing, there's a lot of things that are common. I actually feel like when people describe this market, this set of users, more often than not, they use stereotypes that aren't correct. You know, they think of this sort of skeptical, unemotional engineering stereotype, and that's not actually the case. And it's not been my experience of 25 years working at, I'm an engineer, by the way, myself, working in this community. These are creative people, and they are looking to create creative solutions to technical challenges and societal challenges that have technical solutions. And so that's the other thing that I'm real passionate about, is it's a creative field, and how do we as a company help those people create these system level solutions?
Do you see a day with engineering where we kind of get to the point where there's a lot more, you know, we're all becoming amateur data scientists now. We're all, you know, with low code, a lot of business users are, you know, mix and matching apps and data flows and things like that. Do you see that happening with engineering over time?
It's a good question. I mean, there are parts of it that I think trend in that direction. I mean, certainly the sophistication of the tools and systems goes up and up and up. And actually, I think that creative aspect becomes more and more important, because more and more, you're not having to necessarily operate at the lowest level of technical complexity. That's being abstracted by smart systems, right? And I see that in our space as well. You know, from a trend point of view, intelligent software is going to automate more and more of the rote development that happens to build these kind of systems. And the engineering profession is going to be more and more a creative one that has to sort of figure out the creative solutions that maybe the machine can't, but isn't necessarily low-level coding or, you know, stringing together transistors. That's a thing of the past, and it's going to be less and less part of the profession going forward, I think.
What do you see as your biggest verticals? Like, I know you're big in
Yeah,
semiconductors,
man.
automotive, that kind of thing. What do you look at? You know, I mean, the trends I follow, it's a lot of Internet of Things, it's a lot of analytics, IoT, cloud, how it all fits together. You know, how does that impact the verticals you do? And I guess, where do you see the growth?
Yeah, sure. And for us, if you think about it, we serve every kind of customer that builds something, right? Because we get into the IO and measurement and everything else, so it's something sort of physically gets built. So the biggest sort of growth area for us has been semiconductor, because the world is becoming more and more, you know, semiconductor centric and electronic centric. And of course, that then goes into lots and lots of verticals like IoT, like energy, everywhere else. But we have, you know, really a set of capability that helps design and test those semiconductor products, and that's been a real growth area for us. Second is in automotive, transportation. So we all that's near and dear, because most of us have an automobile. Haven't been using it much the last few months, but we probably still have one. And for us, those trends that you see there, electrification and autonomy, are driving a lot of new technology, and those are big areas where our customers are working together with us to try to invent this new technology. We do a pretty fair amount of business in aero defense and government. Places like new space are a big part of that. So when you see anything that leaves the Earth, requires a lot of technology and attention to the safety and quality of it. So you watch these rocket launches, and good bet that NI technology is deeply ingrained in being able to get those things off the ground. So those are the biggest areas that that we serve and are growing for us.
So when you're working on projects with customers, who comes to who first? Is it a customer that comes to you, or is it something where you see an opportunity and you approach them? And I guess what's the
Good
give and
question.
take?
Yeah, so because of we have this really broad-based portfolio, so we serve about 35,000 companies, and we count, all of the different divisions of a General Electric or a Lockheed Martin as one company. So it's virtually every company building anything is a customer of ours at some level. But in many cases, that's a fairly, small footprint that we have in their company. So that's where we usually start, is because we're a standard, because if you're going to measure anything, you're probably going to use NI software and maybe some of our hardware products. We start there. And then really for us, then the process from a business becomes, how do we engage with our customers and show them that there's actually a lot more that they can do, and that they might be using us for a very narrow part of an application, but in fact, there's a way for them to rethink the way that they maybe develop their semiconductor product, and that they can use a unified approach of test systems going from design through production with unified analytics to be able to improve that process, and not just use one very narrow part of our product portfolio. I mean, that's the typical sales process for us, frankly. And it's not as much about acquiring new customers. It's about enabling those customers to do a heck of a lot more with the capability we have.
Okay. Is there anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything you want to point out?
Yeah, let's see. That's always I got to remember all the things I just said. But
that's a journalist trick where you can go, yeah, I buried the body in the backyard by the shed or something like that.
No, I think, the one thing I'll say about the branding that we're going to do is I'm really passionate about, we have a term we're using called engineer ambitiously. And it's our goal to actually not just celebrate the engineers and what we talked about and the role they have to play, but actually it's a call to action. It's a call to action to engineers to actually challenge the status quo and take a different approach to improve the way that they're developing and testing these products. The example I'll use again that's close to home right now is, I mentioned Ventec and GM and the work going on there. If you had, before this pandemic, taken a set of engineers and tell them they have to scale up a factory brand new with a very complex device in a matter of weeks, I guarantee they would have told you that it's not possible. They would have said, maybe I can do that in 3 months and with this amount of money and everything else, but yet they did it. I find the same thing with my teams. If you had told my teams a few months ago that we needed to operate this business with everyone working from home, we needed to maintain continuity, and we needed to be able to continue to serve our customers and develop all the products that we build, I would have, I'm sure, heard all of the reasons that wasn't possible. And yet we did it. So how can we take that same mentality that exists in a crisis? How can we take that mentality to the everyday technology that we rely on? And NI wants to be a part of helping our customers approach things differently through software primarily, and improve the way that they design and build their products.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Larry.